Hello and Nyob everyone. I hope you guys are all doing well. In today's video, I'll be showing you guys one of my favorite snacks or appetizers, and that is steamed buns. And steamed buns can be made in so many ways. There's so many ways you can make the bun, and there's so many ways to fill it with as well. So you can make it sweet, you can make it savory, but today I'll be showing you guys the way I like to eat it, the way I like to make it. And this is going to be filled with a chicken filling with a non-yeasted bun, meaning I'm not going to be using yeast in my bun. I'll be using baking powder as the leavening agent. But yeah, steamed buns is so delicious. Again, there's so many ways to make it. I'll be showing you guys the way I like to make it today. In our Hmong culture, we actually call this Galabao, but Galabao is actually Laotian, so a lot of Lao people actually call steamed buns Galabao, and we also call steamed buns Kalapao as well in our Hmong culture. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this recipe, and if you do like this recipe, do let me know. And also let me know what you guys like to add into your steamed buns and what kind of filling you guys like and what other ingredients you like to add into your filling. And also share with me other steamed bun recipes that you guys enjoy making as well. So let's go ahead and make some steamed buns. It's gonna be so delicious. So let's go. So we're going to do the dough first, but before you do your dough, go ahead and soak your dried mushrooms. If you guys end up using dried mushrooms, you guys can use fresh shiitake mushrooms. You can also use fresh wood ear mushrooms. I'm using dried ones just because I have it in my pantry. So I'm using about 8 of these really dried shiitake mushrooms, and I'm just going to soak this in water for about 30 minutes, hot water. Same with the wood ear mushroom. I'm only using a small handful because they do get bigger when you soak it. So I'm using a small handful. About when it soaks, I just need about half a cup of this, so just a small handful. So yeah, I'm going to soak this in hot water for about 30 minutes while you do the dough and do your other stuff. So I'll do that. So now we can go ahead and do the dough. I'm going to mix in my dough mixer. So I have a bowl here, and what we're going to add, I'm using 2 kinds of flour today. And like I said, we're doing a baking powder dough today. We're not doing a yeasted dough. This version is going to be a little different in terms of texture. So in a bowl, we're going to add in some all-purpose flour. You guys can use any kind of all-purpose flour, works as well. Add that into the bowl. And then I have some cake flour here. And the reason why I'm using cake flour is because it doesn't have much gluten in there. So when you steam the steamed buns, it's nice and soft and not hard and chewy. So we're going to use the same amount of cake flour, 2 cups of cake flour, 2 cups of all-purpose flour into here. And cake flour, you can find them anywhere in grocery market. They have cake flour, any brand, any kind of cake flour works just as good. And then I'm gonna add in some sugar. This is about 3/4 cups of sugar. Add that in there. And then I have some baking powder. So I'm using double acting baking powder. This is about 2 tablespoons of double acting baking powder. That in, a little bit of salt, about a teaspoon of salt, and then just go ahead and mix it. You guys can do this with all cake flour, but the reason why I'm doing half all-purpose flour and half cake flour is because I want some kind of gluten so that when I actually form it and put the filling in, I have structure to work with. So it looks a lot nicer too. And I like the chew, a little bit of chew to it, but also a little bit of softness to it as well. Some fluffiness with the cake flour. So that's good and mixed. Let's go ahead and add in the wet ingredients. So the wet ingredients is pretty simple. I'm gonna add about 2 tablespoons of neutral oil. You guys can use vegetable oil, canola oil, really up to you. That in. And then I'm gonna add in some milk. This is about 1.25 cups of milk. You guys can use you know, 2%. I'm using whole milk because I want some kind of fat into the dough. But yeah, you're gonna have milk in here. The milk is great as a tenderizer. It also creates the dough to be a lot softer and fluffier. I mean, you guys can use water, but definitely use milk because it creates a really nice fluffy bun and it gets it really soft as well. So those are all our wet ingredients. We're gonna go ahead and mix this into my mixer and for about like 5 to 8 minutes, and then that should be good. So let's go ahead and mix it. Okay, I got my dough hook on. I'm gonna go ahead and close this up. I'm gonna set this to 2. And then we're gonna go and mix this for about 5 to 8 minutes, just until the dough comes together. Okay, so if you're using a hook, the dough will tend to stick onto the hook if you're using your mixer. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove it from the hook and then continue mixing. That way you get more even mixing. Alright, good 5 minutes of mixing this. I'm gonna go and take it off. And we'll continue kneading it on our board. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and dust this with some flour, just so it doesn't stick. Not much, you don't need much. And I have my dough that's nice and mixed. Go ahead and place your dough on here. And it's nice and not so wet. So it should be a nice texture. Shouldn't be so wet, but soft enough for you to go ahead and use. So at this point, I'm just kneading it so the dough comes together. And like I said, since we're doing a non-yeasted dough, we don't have to wait for the dough to proof and double in size because there's no yeast in here. So yeah, I'm just kneading this so it becomes to a nice ball, just like this. And then we're going to go ahead and cover this, put this back in the bowl, put plastic wrap over it, and just let it rest for a good 20 to 30 minutes just to relax the gluten and relax the dough. Since you don't have any yeast in here, you don't have to proof it for an hour, which is nice. It just needs to rest so that when we actually form it into doughs, it's easier and softer to work with. You don't need to oil this or anything, completely fine. Place this in the bowl here and cover it with plastic wrap and let it sit for 20 minutes to 30 minutes. And then while we wait for this to sit, we can go ahead and do our filling. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so while the dough is resting, we can go ahead and start our filling. So like I said, I'm making a chicken filling today instead of a pork filling. You guys can definitely make pork, whatever protein you guys prefer really. But I like chicken just because it's a lot lighter and the taste is not so heavy, which complements the dough really, really well. So I have about 1.5 pounds of chicken thigh in here that I minced up really, really fine. And then I'm going to add the seasonings in. So I'm going to go ahead and add some salt in here. I have some black pepper. I'm using a lot of black pepper because I love a lot of black pepper in here. I have about a mix of black pepper and white pepper. Go ahead and add that in there. You guys can add less if you guys want. It's really up to you. I have a little bit of soy sauce in here as well. And then some fish sauce. I'll put all the measurements down below if you guys want a more accurate read on it. And then I have some oyster sauce. I like the oyster sauce in there, so I'm going to go ahead and add in some oyster sauce as well. So all the seasonings are in. I'm going to go ahead and mix it in so that the chicken is nice and seasoned, and then we'll go ahead and add in our vegetables. So that's nice and mixed. We can go ahead and add in our vegetables and other toppings. So I'm going to go ahead and add in the wooded mushrooms that we soaked earlier. I rinsed it a few times and I cut it into smaller pieces so it's easier to mix and eat. Go ahead and add that in there. That's roughly about 1/2 cup. And then the shiitake mushrooms that we also soaked up, I chopped it into like nice bite-sized pieces. You guys can chop it smaller or bigger depending on you, but I chopped it. I'm going to go ahead and add that in there too. If you guys don't like shiitake mushrooms, you know, you don't have to add it all in there. You can definitely also buy the fresh shiitake mushroom. Tastes just as great. Go ahead and add that in there as well. And then we have about a cup of green onions. You guys can use garlic chives. Garlic chives is great in this recipe as well, but I'm going to use green onions. Go ahead and add all of that in there. And then I have about 1 small onion that I diced up really, really small. Go ahead and add that in there as well. And Chinese sausage, and I love the Chinese sausage, so what I did was I diced into bite-sized pieces here, about 6 Chinese sausage, and I'm actually going to add this into the filling so that each bite you get has a piece of Chinese sausage instead of like a slice of Chinese sausage. So I'm going to go ahead and add this into the filling. I love Chinese sausage, it's so good. Okay, so that's about it for the filling. I'm going to go ahead and mix this really well. Again, since you're working with chicken, if you end up using chicken, just be careful and be mindful that it is chicken, so and it is raw. So anytime you're using it with your hands, make sure you wash your hands. Even with gloves, make sure you wash it after you take your gloves off. But yeah, the nice thing about steamed buns is if you find a really good bun recipe, if you really like it, then the filling is basically up to you. You can fill it with whatever you guys like, your choice of ingredients in there. But you can also add bean thread noodles in here as well. You can also add other vegetables that you prefer to use as well. Alright, so that's nice. I'm gonna go ahead and set this aside, and we can go ahead and start working with our dough. Okay, so the filling's done and the dough has rested. The good thing about this dough is that since it doesn't have yeast, it doesn't overproof. Basically, all we're trying to do with this dough is just to relax the gluten in here, so it's easier to work with. So at this point now, you guys can divide this dough into about 12 equal portions. So I'm gonna go ahead and weigh the portions out with my scale. If you guys don't have a scale, you can just eyeball it to 12. If you're making it at home, size doesn't really matter. Everyone can make their own sizes. You can also make this into like 8 big steamed buns, but I'm gonna make this into 12 individual little buns. So I'm gonna weigh these out to about 3 ounces. If it's a little bit over 3 ounces, it's completely fine. Around like 3.4 ounces, good. That's good. So yeah, I'm gonna go and divide all of these into equal parts, and then after that I'll show you how to roll these out. I divide these into 12 equal portions. They weigh about 3.3 ounces per ball. So at this point, I'm going to take these and I'm going to make them into little balls so that it's easier and even to actually roll and put the filling in. So I'm just going to make these into little balls like this, and then I'm going to set that aside and continue making these into little balls. And if it sticks to the board, you can add a little bit of flour so that it doesn't stick onto there. But this dough is pretty nice. It doesn't really tend to stick as much if you measure out the portions correctly. And also, I forgot to mention to you guys, but if you guys don't have a mixer, you guys can definitely mix this dough by hand for about 5 to 8 minutes by hand, and it works just as well. Because I know a lot of people don't have a mixer. You can definitely do this dough by hand. So yeah, I'm going to finish doing these, and then I'll show you how to fill it and fold it. Okay, so each of these have been rolled out into little balls. So now what we're going to do is we're going to flatten it and then put the filling in. But before you do that, I got to tell you guys that you should have your parchment ready so that you can, when you finish rolling, you just place it on the parchment and then we can go ahead and steam it. But this is basically just parchment paper. I took parchment paper and cut it into squares big enough to hold the buns onto here when we steam it, because they're gonna get double in size when we steam it. I like using parchment paper just because it doesn't really stick onto the bun. I mean, you guys can use wax paper, but wax paper tends to stick onto the bun, so I like parchment paper. So 12 of these cut up into squares. We're gonna have that handy next to the filling and the dough. But now we can go ahead and roll these little balls and make it into little buns. You guys want just a little bit of flour so it doesn't stick both sides. All you're going to do is basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from flattening this just like this with my hands, make sure it doesn't stick onto the board, and then I'm going to roll with my rolling pin. I have a really small rolling pin here. I'm going to start from the outside out, so you're going to do in and out and keep the middle part a little bit thicker, because when we crimp it and fold it, the top is going to have a thicker layer because you're going to fold all of the outside edges inside, and it's going to get a lot thicker. So I like to make the outside a little bit thinner so that when we put it all together, the thin parts add up to a really thick layer to match with the bottom layer, if that makes sense. But I'm going to roll this out like this and keep rotating it so that you get a round dough. But yeah, you guys can tell I'm rolling from the outside. I'm rolling from the in to the outside instead of rolling from deep center out. I'm rolling just a little bit of shy of the center out. And you can see there's a little bit of dent there, and it's a lot thicker. You can see like that. So at this part, I'm gonna just flatten it just a tad, but continue to roll the outside a little bit thinner.
Okay, that's pretty good. I just want this big enough so that I can put a lot of filling in and be easier to fold. But yeah, this is probably as big as my hand here. Probably about like a 5-inch round circle, 4 to 5-inch round circle. But you guys can tell a little bit of this. This center here is a little thick, but the outside is really thin still, like that. So then we roll it and tuck it together. It adds up pretty evenly. So yeah, I'm gonna do this to all of the dough, and then we can go ahead and start filling this up. So I'm gonna set this aside and continue doing it to all of the dough. All right, so I finished frying out all my dough. So you guys can see here, center is still a little bit thick, but the ends here a little bit thin, so that when we roll it together, it evens out. Okay, so now we can go ahead and fill it. So I'm gonna grab one and put it on my palms here. And I'm going to go ahead and add a big scoop of filling into the center. Now you just wanna make sure you have enough filling for you to be able to roll this into a bun. So if it's easier, you can place it on a surface board here and roll it in. And I gotta be honest, I'm not great at crimping and folding it in and making those beautiful, beautiful crimps and folds. But, you know, I'll try my best to do it. I have a filling there. I know it's a lot, but you know, I like a lot of filling in my steamed buns. So I try my best to put a lot of filling in. So I'm gonna take the ends here and just fold it in, tuck this in, fold it in, tuck this in. And the thing about this dough is that since it's not yeasted, it doesn't have a lot of stretch to it. So, you know, you might have troubles with folding it in, and then just tuck it in like that. Easy as that. The thing about this is that it doesn't matter if you can see the crimps or not. When we steam this, it's gonna fluff up really big and have a few cracks in the center, and so you don't really get to see the crimps at all or the folds. But other than that, this is basically how I do it. So see here, and then you take that parchment paper that we cut up earlier, just place your bun onto that, and then we'll place this on a platter and we'll bring it out to steam once all of these are done folding. So yeah, pretty nice, pretty easy. I'll show that again to you guys. Same thing, I'm gonna put the dough on the board and then do a big scoop of the filling, just enough for you to handle to fold it. And if you guys are big hard-boiled egg fans, you can definitely add a slice of hard-boiled eggs in there, but our family doesn't really care for it, so we're not gonna add hard-boiled eggs. But you know, you guys can definitely add it in there. There's no problem with adding it in there. Just make sure you have enough space to actually fold and make it into a bun. And then we're gonna take each end here, tuck this in, take one, fold it 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 in. Just keep doing this until the filling is covered. And then when you get to the center, kind of tuck it in like that, just to close it. And that's it for that. Same thing, get your parchment paper ready, place it on your parchment paper for steaming. Okay, so I finished crimping these and folding it into buns. Some of these did not come out pretty because I filled it too much. Like I put too much filling in. You guys can tell. Like this one has a few holes and gaps in there. You know, it tends to happen. I put too much filling in this one, but either way, it's still gonna steam and we're still gonna eat it, right? And I did have some filling left over. So you guys can see here, this is pretty much how much leftover I have left. This probably can make 6 more buns. So you guys can definitely take this recipe, half of this recipe, make more dough and make more buns with the rest of the filling here. But you know, at the same time, you can freeze this filling and use it for next time you want to make it. You also can stir fry this and eat it with rice. You can use this filling for whatever you guys want. So yeah, now we can go ahead and set our steamer and start steaming these. Let's go steam. Okay, so I have my bamboo steamer here going. The water is nice and boiled. I'm gonna go ahead and place the buns in there. This steamer can probably fit 3 per layer, so I'm only gonna put 3 in here. If you guys have a bigger steamer, definitely use that to steam all of it at once. It'll be a lot easier. But I'm just going to do this way because I have this bamboo steamer handy. Okay. Go ahead and close this up. And we're going to steam this for a good 30 minutes. 25 to 30 minutes until the meat is cooked. Again, this is chicken, so we want the internal temperature to be around 165 to 170 degrees. Personally, I like to cook it until 170 to 175 degrees just because it is a mixed meat. So I want to cook it fully, not raw. So yeah, we're going to steam this for about 30 minutes or so and then come back and check on it. Okay, so it's been steaming for 30 minutes. Let's take a look at it. Woo! Okay, I'm gonna turn off the heat. And we're gonna take these out and let it cool before you eat it. I would let it sit for 5 minutes before you actually can consume it. But yeah, we are done. Let's go ahead and cool these and then I'll show you guys the inside. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut one for you guys to see the center. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this in half. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut that open. So if you guys can take a look here, it's really moist and juicy, like that feeling. Oh my gosh. If you guys put hard-boiled eggs in there, definitely it'll look really pretty too. It's really up to you, but it's super soft when you eat this. Like that. Yum!